Hi, I'm Liz Larson with The Art of Frosting. A while back I got some requests for cherry blossoms. So today we're going to do a double cherry blossom on kind of a traditional cherry blossom design here. So we have a 3-tier cake, great for a wedding. It's tiny, could work for a bridal shower as well. So this one's good for beginners as well as pros. We're going to try a few new things, a few new tips. So let's get started. Okay, so you can see we're starting with an all pink 3-layer stacked wedding cake. So what I've got here is I've got a 10, a 6, and basically a 3 up here. The whole thing is iced in a very light pink, and I've used a number 12 figure piping tip here around the base. I want it to be very, very plain. Now this cake is doweled. It does have the coconut in between, and it's got the dowel all the way through. So if you don't know how to stack a wedding cake, please watch the How to Stack a Wedding Cake video that I'll put in the description section. So we want our cakes to be nice and secure. So not only are we going to learn how to do the cherry blossom today, but I'm going to show you a few color tricks. So since I have a pink base here, I'm going to continue to use that pink icing as the base for my other colors. So I want a brown to go up the side for the stem, to look like the stem. But to make sure that that brown is not a color that really doesn't go, I'm actually going to make it with my pink base. So I'm just going to add a little bit of my pink base, just like I would white, in with some brown food coloring, and just go ahead and blend that up. So we're always doing color striping, and this is going to be no different. I want to color stripe right up the side here with my raw food coloring, meaning just the straight food coloring. I've got some of my brown that's in the middle. It's a middle color brown. I'm going to layer that right in there. And then I've got some that's a lighter brown and almost pink. And I'm going to layer that right in there. The more of that we have, the more interesting our stems are going to be, and the less likely it'll be to look like poop. You know, that's always a no-no. You always want to avoid at all costs anything on your cake looking like poop. And when you're dealing with brown icing, well, that's a possibility. So color stripe when you're using brown. So find the smoothest side of your cake. There's always a smoothest side. And you want to start to draw in your stems. The reason we want to do that in advance is it's going to be really hard to re-ice this cake if you mess it up. You can, but it's going to be hard. So it's easier if you come in with a pencil or a skewer in this case and sketch in. So what we're going to do is we're going to sketch some swirls. So what I did to get help with this design is I went online and I looked up cherry blossom images. You can just Google cherry blossom images. And I found some that had these nice swirls that I liked. Now there's a lot of Japanese designs that are cherry blossoms that you can choose from. They're actually drawings, which is very helpful. So right now what we want to do is we want to lay out our lines. So we want to continue this one up here. And a big swirl. Now we need to wrap around our cake up to about here. So it's a good idea to have that line laid out for about here. And I'm going to have this one come down and come right into this line here. Like so. And just continue on to lay out what the shape of your stems are going to look like. I'm going to turn around to the back, and we're going to actually continue this, but we're not going to go all the way up the back. We're just going to do a light design back here so that we get the same feeling for the back of the cake, but we're just going to add on just a little bit. So I'm starting out with a number 12 figure piping tip. You can see that this is just a round. You can start out smaller if you'd like for your design to be smaller, or if you're afraid that your pressure control will be a little strong. Squeeze out your bag till you get the color that you want, and use a light hand, very light, squeeze lightly, come around and down. And you can see that I got a little pop here. That's okay, I'm just gonna come back in and lightly blend. Now you can start anywhere with your stems. I'm starting where my outline is, so I can get a good idea of how I want it to look, and then I will fill in from there. So I'm just going to come back in. This is a number 4 writer, and I'm just going to add in a little bit of accent detail, some smaller swirls here. Now you can leave this completely off if you want. I just wanted to add just a little bit more, but you guys know me, more is more. Actually, these Japanese cherry blossom cakes actually are usually a little more stark, but I found some that had a little more detail, and those appealed a little more to me, but go off your own design aesthetic. So we're going to start with our flowers, and I've actually am sitting now, and this is actually the best way for you to do this too, is sitting as well, and I will show you why. We're going to do something that we've never done on this channel before. First, I'm going to blend my colors. Remember I told you I wanted you to blend everything with your pink so that your hues all kind of match. So I'm adding some red to my pink. You can see that I'm not getting red, but kind of more of a rose, and that's perfect. I want to take a little bit more of my solid color, and we're going to color stripe, oopsie. We're going to color stripe the bag, just right up one side, so that we can get that intense color without having a lot of flavor of red. And we don't want a lot of this. We really just want a light, if you can see down in there, a light coating of this red. We want it to be just our center. And these are going to be little flowers, so we don't want a lot of it. Next, we're going to load in our pink. And then for the outside edges, I want some white. So I'm just going to load some white down the outside. So if you can see, we've got our red, our white, and our pink. We're going to use a tiny rose tip. We've never done this before either. This is a 102. Our smallest we've used so far is a 104. You can use a 104 for this as well if you just use a really light hand, and your flowers will be just a little bigger. So I want to introduce to you the nail. Now, some of you who've been a decorator a long time have seen a nail, and you may even make your roses on it now. You know that if you're watching this channel, we do it on a skewer. But a nail can come in handy, and we're going to do a trick today that I've never shown you before. So we used a dot of icing, and we're going to put a little piece of parchment. You may notice here that I have a pile of little squares of parchment. They're 1 by 1, 1 by 1.5. Little squares of parchment or wax paper is what you're going to need on hand. Then you want to use your nail, and you can go ahead and squeeze out until you get the right color that you want. But we're going to do a lot of these, and you want them to have varying colors. So we're actually going to do a 5-petal flower. We're going to do double cherry blossoms, so really light little ruffles, and it's 5. See, I'm turning while I'm piping, and you could stop with 1, that's fine, 1 layer. We're going to do 2, just come right back over again, and it's just a really very light ruffle. Okay, so I'm actually using pastry bread here. You guys can use buttercream as well. We're just going to set these aside, and then we're going to put them in the freezer. And you want probably about 30 to 35 flowers. And we're going to just slip them off of these little papers when they're frozen and put them right on our cake. It's way, way easier than trying to pipe these on. Now, they could be piped on, but let me tell you, it's a nightmare. This is so much easier and so much faster. I want to show you, I'm really just about 7 or 8 flowers in. I want to show you that my color has started to change already, where I'm getting more red, which is great because we'll get more and more varied colors of our flowers, which will look a little bit more realistic, and it's also really a lot more interesting. You want to be careful here not to get a pinwheel effect. Make sure you're using your wrist and flattening out. And you can see here our plate is starting to fill up. Maybe just 30 more flowers to go. Just want to walk you guys through this one more time. We've got the fat side down, the skinny side up, our darkest color in the middle. We're going to do a little ruffle while we turn our nail. The next one, a little ruffle while we turn the nail. See, it's both at the same time, ruffling and turning. A little ruffle while we turn our nail. And again, and you want to tuck this last one right down in, flatten out your angle, and pull it right in. So spin it back around, and you're going to do the same thing, just much smaller, very, very light pressure control. Now, if you're an experienced decorator, doing the double cherry blossom is a good idea. If you're not so experienced, go ahead and just leave it at one layer. Just one layer looks just like that. Once you have your plate or several plates of flowers done, and I do recommend doing it on more than one plate, that way you have flowers that are still in the freezer while you're putting flowers on. Go ahead and stick them in the freezer. You need at least 20 minutes, probably half an hour. My cherry blossoms have been in the freezer for about 45 minutes, which is plenty long. You're going to have to work fast though. You want to just slip them off with a palette knife. Have a sharp skewer nearby, and that will help just place them right on there. Check your Google images to see how they're placed on the different designs that you find, and you can kind of just follow that. You want to quickly move around your design, and if your flowers just start to get too soft to place, it's easy, just tuck them right back in the freezer for a little bit longer, and you're good to start all over again. Also, I have a second platter of flowers that when these get a little too soft for me to work with, I can just grab those, tuck these back in, and I can just keep working. Use your skewer to make them well attached. You don't want them falling off. And you can see that I have not filled the center with the stamen yet. And the reason is I want to be able to use my skewer here to attach them, and if my stamen was in the middle, then I would ruin that. Spin this around. We don't want to forget the back side of our cake. Now, since this is kind of a traditionally more sparse design, you don't want to pile too much onto the back. Now, you guys know me, more is more always, but on this design, not so much. And so you want to just be careful about not throwing your flowers around. For one thing, you want to just be careful about not overloading the back, which is kind of just an accent. I'm back to sitting again for this part, and I want to have a really steady hand when I do this, and I want to be able to rest my hands on the table. I've got my bag filled with red and pink. I've painted the outside of the bag with red and filled the rest with pink. And I've got a number 1 writing tip in here. It's a very, very fine tip. If you don't have this tip, you can do the same thing with a parchment and just not cut the tip. And usually you'll end up with the same thing. And we're pulling out very, very fine stamen. So you want to squeeze, let it build down in, and then pull to a very fine, fine point. And you really just want a few of these. The stamen for cherry blossoms are very, very fine. And it's kind of hard to reproduce how fine they are in icing. This is about as close as we can get. Now, the centers can be green, they can be yellow, some of them are even a little bit brown, they can be bright pink, and they can be red. And I tried the green, and I didn't really like it for this design, so I'm going to stick with the red stamen. And we're just going to fill those all in. Because I just can't help leaving things alone, with my little stamen bag, I'm coming in and adding just a little bit of an accent here. Just some little dots that start a little larger and come down to tiny, tiny, tiny. I just couldn't stand it. It was too plain for me. But traditionally these cherry blossom cakes are very plain. I just like the little bit of accent, and you know, more is more. So this cake really could be done just like this, but I do want to show you that if you wanted to add some green, you can add a few leaves, but it really needs to be just a couple. So I've cut a tip in the end of my parchment bag, a V. You guys have seen me do that before. Makes a little impromptu leaf tip. And you just want to come in, a light zigzag, and pull. And you really just want a couple. So 2 there, maybe 1 here, and maybe just 1 more down here. This design usually does not have a lot of leaves. And like I said, you could have left it like it is. I actually like a tiny bit of green because I think it breaks it up. But the style really is the pink on pink. It's very, very minimalistic. And of course, I have made it not minimalistic, which is kind of my way. But just the tiniest bit of green can add just a little bit of breakup of the pink. So this is our cherry blossom design. And like I said, I added a little more than I intentionally planned to, because with me, more is more. But it's still a fairly simple design. And I think with doing the cherry blossoms on a nail, it works great for a beginner to do where they don't have to figure out all the angles. Even for a pro, it's way faster. I hope you guys give that one a try. Don't forget, you can find me at The Art of Frosting, www.theartoffrosting.blogspot.com. Facebook at The Art of Frosting, on Etsy, etsy.com, at The Woodshop TV, and there's lots more to come, so keep watching. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Bye.